During the early stages of production, Blade Trinity was envisioned as a post-apocalyptic action movie where vampires ruled the world, and Wesley Snipes' character was humanity's last hope. But one day, the movie's screenwriter and future director David Goyer met with studio executives and decided to change the trilogy's trajectory of development, as the post-apocalyptic Blade seemed too dark and depressing. This change was the catalyst for all the drama that happened on the movie's set. Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson, who played Whistler in 3 Blade movies, were big fans of the dark and depressing script and didn't appreciate David Goyer's new vision. The first movie's director, Stephen Norrington, also shared their viewpoint. He received an offer to direct Blade Trinity after Guillermo del Toro turned down the director's chair. However, Norrington declined because he found the script to be mindless and boring. When all the directors who were offered the script turned it down, the job was given to the movie's screenwriter, David Goyer. Goyer was a very well-known screenwriter in Hollywood. His career started with Death Warrant, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme. He also wrote the scripts for the first 2 Blade movies and worked on Dark City, The Puppet Masters, and a variety of other projects. Such screenwriters often get the opportunity to direct something. Studios believe that people with so much experience can do a better job than some first-time directors. And sometimes they really do. Shane Black, for example, did an excellent job during his directorial debut with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. David Twohy wrote scripts for several projects, later directed the movies The Arrival and Pitch Black. Kurt Weimer's work on Equilibrium was also quite good, despite the movie's poor box office performance. But naturally, things can't always go well, and movies like Street Fighter are a prime example. The filming process was difficult. Wesley Snipes was unhappy with the script and constantly suggested ideas to develop his character, but Goyer ignored them all. It is hard to say who was right in this situation, because no one knows what exactly Snipes' ideas were. Rumor has it that one of his suggestions was to include a sex scene between his character and Jessica Biel, but Goyer thought the scene would add nothing to the movie and rejected the idea. There has been no official confirmation of this, though. Anyway, Snipes was furious at being treated this way, especially considering he was the main star of the movie. He started accusing Goyer of being racist and trying to push him out of his franchise. Snipes claimed that the previous parts of the movie were not as white as Blade Trinity. According to Patton Oswalt, who played one of the minor roles in the movie, Wesley Snipes stopped showing up on set and spent his time in his trailer smoking weed. Snipes always responds to this accusation with laughter. Like, who the hell is Patton Oswalt? Snipes believes Patton Oswalt made up this whole weed thing just to get attention. Naturally, the director was not pleased with Snipes' behavior. One day, he told the actor that they already shot enough close-ups of his character and would now use his double for the remaining scenes. This was too much for Snipes. He attacked the director and attempted to strangle him. After that, David Goyer hired bodyguards to keep Wesley Snipes away from him. In one of his interviews, Snipes said that the source of his growing dissatisfaction was Goyer's attempts to push him out of the movie and replace him with Ryan Reynolds' character. Reynolds' role was indeed greatly expanded during filming. However, Goyer claims that he was forced to do so due to Snipes' behavior, who was frequently absent from the set, leaving him with no other choice. Reynolds once said in an interview that their relationship with Snipes didn't work out from the first day of filming. He said Wesley only talked to him through someone else and constantly insulted and threatened him with violence. Blade Trinity didn't exactly fail when it hit theaters, but its box office earnings were lower than the first movie in the franchise, despite a significantly increased production budget. Thus, New Line Cinema found making movies about Blade no longer profitable, so they returned the rights to Marvel Studios. The Blade franchise has never been particularly popular at the box office. The 1998 film grossed $132 million against a $45 million budget. The second Blade earned $155 million on a $54 million budget. In other words, the first 2 films grossed 3 times their production costs. Considering that studios receive about 50% of box office revenue, the income was quite low. Furthermore, movie production budgets do not include advertising costs, which must be covered as well. The third film grossed $129 million on a $65 million budget, meaning Blade Trinity didn't even make back its production costs. One can only guess how much was spent on the promotion. However, the movie's release didn't appease Wesley Snipes, and he filed a $5 million lawsuit against the producers and studio. He claimed that the producers completely ignored his suggestions for the movie, they hired actors without his knowledge, and changed the script without consulting with him. In addition, he was constantly insulted on set for his skin color. The case didn't reach court and was settled by the parties' mutual agreement. It is still unknown how much money Snipes received. Wesley Snipes agreed in an interview that he was partially responsible for the movie's lackluster performance. However, he denied most of the accusations against him, especially those related to his on-set behavior and unwillingness to work. The blame for the third installment's failure likely falls on everyone. The studio, hesitant to venture into a more post-apocalyptic and epic storyline, David Goyer struggling with directing and overall control, and Wesley Snipes not taking his most famous role seriously. But, as mentioned earlier, they all had mitigating circumstances. Blade never made much money for the studio, so it's not surprising that they didn't want to spend the ridiculous amounts of money on production that a post-apocalyptic Blade would require. Goyer also likely had no malicious intent when he tried to shift the focus from Blade to some other characters. After all, he worked on the first two movies and saw that Blade's box office numbers seemed stuck at around $150 million. He thought that bringing in other actors could help cross that threshold. Although the first two films were well received, the second part saw only a 15% increase in box office receipts. And this wouldn't be a problem, but its budget increased by 15% too. It's also easy to understand Wesley Snipes, who is furious to see the spotlight shift away from his character. Who would like that? If the movie had been successful, it would be clear who was right and who was wrong. Yet, we have what we have. Wesley Snipes' career went downhill after Blade Trinity. Goyer's career, on the other hand, was unaffected. He later directed The Invisible, and wrote scripts for dozens of acclaimed movies including The Dark Knight, Jumper, and Man of Steel, and worked on Terminator: Dark Fate.